I'm Emmons Whited. I like to fish, and this is how I caught a really, really big striped bass. Fishing is what I do. There's nothing I'd rather do than fish. Spring, summer, and fall, I devote myself to fishing, and one type of fishing in particular. I fish for striped bass from shore using artificial lures. No boats and no bait. Over the course of the season, I'll catch hundreds of striper and spend hundreds of hours fishing for them. I keep a log, and last year I racked up somewhere in the ballpark of 200 hours spent fishing for striped bass. To put that into perspective, if someone were to recreate that and they went fishing for 5 hours every time they went, they would have to go 35 times to accumulate 200 hours of fishing. And I don't mean to sound boastful, because there are certainly people who are out there doing it a lot harder than I am, catching a lot more fish, but it does give some insight as to how much I'm out there. Anyways, I had a couple goals going into last season, but the most pressing goal, my number one goal, was to catch a fish that was above a post slot. This is a fish that is above the legal size limit of what can be kept. Specifically, the slot is 28 to 35 inches, so any fish over 35 is considered a post slot. I'll be honest, this ended up being a lot harder than I expected. Throughout the season, I lost a lot of fish that would have been post slots, whether they snapped my line in the rocks or came unhooked as I was trying to land them. I really felt like I had bad luck with catching big fish and was stuck catching smaller fish either below the slot or within the slot, and nothing above 35 inches. I was 150 fish deep before it happened. Two of my buddies and I were fishing a rocky ledge on a bluebird, dead calm evening, no wind, but despite the calm atmosphere, the ocean was still pretty kicked up. The swell was pretty high, around maybe 4 feet, and in this spot, more than other spots, it influences the fishing hugely. It definitely adds a different layer of complexity to the fishing. That being said, striped bass thrive in these conditions with bigger surf, and we had already caught some nice fish that day, so we knew they were fired up, we knew there were big fish around, there was certainly a chance that we could get into some big fish. I was casting into a deep, especially turbulent hole of water when it happened. Even as someone who has caught a lot of fish, I knew this was different right off the bat. The fish halted my lure completely. It felt like a cinder block had been attached to the end of my line. Immediately, the fish started feeling drag. For anyone who doesn't know, drag is the amount of resistance that the reel provides to prevent fish from taking line off of your reel. When I hooked that fish, my drag was pretty tight and the fish was still taking plenty of line. And it didn't stop running, even as I continued to tighten my drag. I knew it was a massive fish. After fighting the fish for a few minutes and exhaustingly pulling it closer to shore, the adrenaline started to wear off and nervousness took its place. It was late enough in the season that my window to get a fish of that size was closing, slowly but surely. As I said earlier, because of the steep drop off into the water, it was a tough spot to land a fish, especially one more than 30 pounds. There also really wasn't anywhere to go and grab the fish, so I ended up having to wait for a wave to wash over the fish and draw it up onto the seaweed. And in the meantime, the fish was thrashing around right off the rocks, threatening to dive deep at any moment and cut the line or break me off. But I was lucky, and a wave came right as I had drawn the fish up to the surface, and pulling on my rod and timing it with the wave, I was able to draw the fish onto the shore and run down to grab it before the next wave came. Getting hold of that fish was truly a moment of shock, elation, and a lot of relief. Seeing how big it really was, I knew I'd caught a fish much bigger than I had expected to catch. It was the fish of a lifetime, 44 inches, 8 inches bigger than the slot. I had more than exceeded my goal. Carrying the 30+ pound fish down to the water, I released it into the waves as gently as I could, made sure it swam off, and immediately went to hug my friends. It really was a big deal. Thanks for watching.